Welcome to Building History Brick by Brick. I'm Rhiannon, your host, and this is Libby. She's one of thousands of artifacts we host here at the museum every year. But unlike many of our donations, her history is a little bit more cryptic. With an unprovable tale from an old relic seller, we realized that Libby could come from anywhere in history and anywhere in the country, which made us wonder, if given the chance, what kind of stories could a brick tell us about the past? This month, Libby's going to help us travel back in time to her alleged hometown of Richmond, Virginia. The year, 1864, and the Civil War is raging on. But in the midst of the battle lies a building, simple and made of brick, that belies the horrors that it hosts. This is the Libby Prison Camp.
Libby Prison was built sometime in the 1840s on the James River in an area known as Tobacco Row. 3 stories tall and made of brick, it was located in Richmond's busy port area. Its ownership history is sketchy, but by 1855 it was owned by Captain Luther Libby, as announced in the paper that January. The Maine-born businessman was well known in the city, serving as a port warden since the 1840s, sat as a city-level commissioner, and running his successful ship chandlery and grocery. His operations at 20th and Carey Streets were quite busy and remained as such through the start of the Civil War. The building was pressed into service by the Confederate forces in late 1861, and Libby leased it to the military for $100 per month. The first floor housed a hospital, and it was intended to use the upper levels as temporary prisoner holdings. But with the arrival of 500 captured men in March 1862, its time as a prison began in earnest. In the beginning, the only detainees were brought to Libby were officers, with enlisted sent elsewhere. But with nearly 200 battles fought in Virginia alone during the war, prisoners were sent wherever they could be housed. It is estimated that in the 3.5 years the prison was in existence, 20,000 men passed through its walls, with around 1,000 dying from the prison's primitive conditions. Early on, Libby was named as the headquarters for the Confederate States military prison camp system, but this honor was dubious at best. Like Andersonville, Libby's conditions were brutal. The upper stories reserved for prisoners were overrun with men. While many were transported out of Libby for exchanges or to other prisons, there was little relief to the crowding as prisoner transports passed through the area weekly and sometimes daily, bringing hundreds of POWs to Richmond. Food scarcity was a major issue during the entire run of the war, but in 1863 and 1864, this scarcity reached near famine levels. The resulting malnutrition made it difficult for men to stave off or fight savage illnesses like dysentery that passed through the population. POWs that arrived at the camp already sick saw their chances of survival plummet. Libby's few doctors were certain that even if a prisoner survived the conditions of the camp, their long-term health had been damaged beyond repair. Despite this, Libby's prisoners found ways to create a sense of normalcy and their demoralizing conditions. Among these attempts were the Libby Chronicle, which was compiled weekly and read at a captive audience. While humor was the most common theme, prisoners wrote op-eds, shared letters, and even wrote poems to relate their experiences. Those that didn't write the Chronicle certainly wrote where they could, with letters passing out of the prison regularly. Wardens limited the letters' length to only 6 lines, which created a stuttered approach to reading the letters back home. Some were even published in the local paper, such as the Richmond Christian Recorder, which printed the following from an unknown soldier. My dear wife, yours received. No hopes of exchange. Send cornstarch. Want socks. No money. Rheumatism in left shoulder. Pickles very good. Send sausages. God bless you. Kiss the baby. Hail Columbia, your devoted husband. The soldier's lament at no hopes of an exchange was a common one among the long-timers. Eventually, several prisoners opted to take their destiny into their own hands and planned to escape the inescapable Libby prison. POWs dug several tunnels in the dark of night, although only one proved successful in connecting with the outside world. In early February 1864, 109 officers crawled through the tunnel. Most headed to the woods, and 57 made it to freedom. The remaining prisoners were caught within a few days and returned to Libby. The prison remained in operation until it was evacuated in 1865 when the city was abandoned by the Confederate government. Those who were too sick or injured were left behind to be rescued by the advancing Union Army. In a twist of fate, the Northerners continued to use Libby as a prison, but this time for Confederate officers. It was reported their conditions were much improved. The building remained in Richmond until Chicago businessman Charles Gunther had it moved to the Windy City, where the first museum dedicated to the war was opened. It is unknown how many visitors passed through the reconstructed prison, but it served in this role for nearly a decade. Gunther then sold it to the Coliseum Company, who attempted to return it to Richmond. When this stalled, they sold the dismantled building to souvenir hunters, including individual bricks. This wasn't the end for Libby, however. Nails from the prison were purchased and included in the making of the Jamestown Exposition's Pocahontas Bell in 1907. The door eventually made its way to Richmond's American Civil War Museum, where it is housed with prisoner relics collected over the years. And parts of Libby still litter the Civil War relic world, with alleged bricks sold in shops and at flea markets throughout the South, one of which made its way to the BCHA's collections. A historic marker is all that remains of the Libby prison at 20th and Carey Streets, a small reminder that the brutality of war cannot be underestimated.
The Tobacco Row building is now gone, but the spirit of its prisoners live on in the words of one soldier determined to survive. Hail Columbia. Grab your giggle water and join us as we shimmy and shake down to 1929 Chicago next month to explore the story of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Thanks for watching.